So there I was, back at the very same motel, still trying to come to terms with what I'd done. Here's my story. It had already been a week since me and my girlfriend Courtney broke up after a 3-year relationship. October was always my favorite time of the year because of Halloween, but this year things were different. I was a mess. I picked up the rest of my things the day before. She already changed the locks, so I guess there was no going back, and it wasn't long before I began to feel the need for some sweet revenge. My mind was in a dark place, which eventually lured me to the dark web, and after exploring a number of forums, I was referred to a link that led me to a curious webpage. The aesthetic reminded me of those old 90s web pages. Just an image, a text box, and a Bitcoin address. I was told that the site was used exclusively for hardcore pranks that were completely anonymous and as simple as filling out detailed instructions and sending some Bitcoins to the address below. There weren't any prices displayed on the page, but the forum members told me that I should just pay whatever I thought the prank was worth, although there weren't any guarantees. Go figure. I never had the courage to use the dark web before, to be perfectly honest, but I was driven by a strong desire for revenge. A Halloween prank that she will never forget. My plan was to have someone enter her apartment wearing some kind of Halloween costume, and I would take some photos from the motel across the street where I was staying. I provided detailed instructions including the time and address. I knew she wouldn't be home because she would always get invited to Halloween parties by her colleagues from work, and wouldn't usually get back until around midnight. So I scheduled the prank to take place on Halloween night at around 9 PM. It's a lot easier to pull off a prank on someone whose routine you already know very well, and I knew she would totally freak out after seeing the pictures. I sent around $150 worth of Bitcoin to the address. A little expensive for just a prank, I know, but it did involve breaking and entering. So Halloween night had arrived and everything was in place. Courtney had already left for work and, as usual, would head directly to the party afterwards, and I was anxiously waiting with my camera and a clear view of her apartment. As the hour approached 10 PM, I began to suspect that the whole site was just a scam, but at that moment, I noticed something moving in her apartment. I stared in absolute silence as a hooded figure wearing a skeleton mask emerged from the door. I remember thinking how perfect it was, but as I began taking pictures, I noticed something strange. The prankster appeared to be having trouble breathing and was stumbling around the apartment. Now this was a nightmare. I sent a complete stranger to my ex-girlfriend's apartment, and things could get very complicated if he was still there when she got back. I know the prank was supposed to be hardcore, but things had already gone too far, so I headed over to the apartment to see if I could help. However, by the time I got there, the prankster had already passed out on the floor. I checked for a pulse, but it was very weak. So I removed the mask, which is when my heart sank, as I realized it was Courtney. My initial response was that she came home early after getting drunk at the party, but then I noticed something in her hand. Something terrifyingly familiar. After getting her to the hospital, the doctors discovered a cocktail of drugs in her system, and she never made it to the party. She has no recollection of what happened that night after work, and even thanked me and remarked on how lucky she was that I just happened to stop by. I can't take this guilt anymore, or pretend that I had nothing to do with it. I know I'm a coward for not having the courage to tell you this to your face, but Courtney, if you're watching, I want you to know that it was my fault. And I'm sorry.